Are you afraid of flying? If you are, this video won't help you at all. Oh, hey guys, it's Erica from America, your favorite flight attendant. Today I'm going to mess with your heads. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to another session of Q&A where I answer the questions that you guys post on my Travel Tuesday videos. I've got quite a few really good questions today from first-time flyers who are scared of flying. What would I recommend? What do I say to them? I say a lot because I'm a talker. To pets in the cabin, to wheelchair tips and assistance, and I had another one, I already forgot what it was, but I'm sure you'll see it soon. So if you guys are down to hear some answers from a flight attendant about some questions that people have about flying, you came to the right place. Let's get into this. The first question is, what are your recommendations for nervous or fearful flyers? I took a fear of flying class that helped, but it's a journey. Raising my feet off the floor during turbulence and watching how the cabin crew reacts, both have helped. Thanks. Well, my first recommendation is never tell the flight attendant, because we'll screw with you because we think it's funny. Actually, no, that's just me. I'm a jerk. If anybody tells me that they're a first-time flyer, I can't help but mess with them. Usually I do that to get them to laugh, and if they laugh, then they can relax. But I will do stuff like, what is that noise? I've never heard that noise before. That's a totally new noise for a plane. To when we land sometimes in the jump seat, if I'm in the front, I'll be like, "Huh," and pretend like I'm falling out of my jump seat even though we're fully strapped in. I did that once on a plane where the first-time flyer was in seat 2A on the 145. So she was within my eye distance. She was in her 40s, never flown before. And I was like, oh, I'm going to mess with you now. And so because I said that, I think she braved herself up a bit. And then basically was okay. She did look out the window the whole time and realized it's not nearly what she thought it was. You're not whizzing past everything. It's not the Blue Angels. You're going very slow. And the beautiful thing about flying is that every time you look out the window, not only will the clouds be different, the clouds will be like something you've never seen before every single time you open that window. But the ground will be different. It could be different colors. I've seen it black and white. I've seen the colors of fall. I've seen it in the spring when things start to turn green. I've seen it after the fields have been mowed. I've seen when they've burned the fields to clear the crops. I've seen circular rainbows on clouds, like perfect rainbows that are a circle. And one time, I swear, for just a moment, I thought I saw the monster on the wing from the Twilight Zone. Nearly gave myself a heart attack. I saw that when I was 12, and even now, at my age, as a flight attendant, I can't help but look out the windows on rainy nights just to the tips of the wings to make sure that there's nothing there, which I know is not helping a fearful flyer. But like I said, you don't want to tell us because, well, you could tell us, and we would probably liquor you up, just so you know. I don't know if liquor is one of the things that you want, but here is what I tell all first-time flyers, especially kids. Everything on the plane has a backup system. Okay, there's 2 air systems. There's 2 sets of wheels for each wheel that comes down. There's 2 engines, 2 wings, 2 pilots. Everything has a backup system. So that's part 1. Part 2, the pilots and the flight attendants check the plane from the nose to the tail, absolutely every single flight. If you get there before the pilots, or before the plane even, and then you see the plane come to the gate, you can watch at the window as there will always be at least one pilot that gets out and walks around the plane. The first officer usually will walk around the plane and look at every single screw he can look at to see if anything looks out of place, to see if there's any bird strike damage or anything that needs to be reported to maintenance immediately. They have to do that before they leave every plane unless the new crew is coming out to take it. They get there, then the new first officer will walk around the plane. And sometimes the captain will switch off. Sometimes it'll be the captain that walks around the plane. But they will look for anything weird or unusual, and they will call maintenance immediately. Inside the cabin, when the first officer returns, the 2 of them together will go over every single button in that cockpit. They have a checklist that they go through, and usually one of them will read it off, and then the other one has to make a certain response that they've looked at it, and then it's operating or not operating. So they double-check absolutely everything. The flight attendants inside, we check all of the emergency equipment to make sure we have all the life-saving equipment that we would need, from the oxygen to the first aid kit to the AED, even to backup snacks that we need in case we have to sit on the tarmac for too long. So the pilots check their stuff, the flight attendants check their stuff, anything at all from a little tiny screw, we call maintenance. For example, There was one time that I was training a new guy who had just finished his month-long class to become a flight attendant. And what they do after you do the month-long class is they put you on a plane with flight attendants for about 4 days, and then we have them do everything. One of the planes, it was a CRJ. We were getting rid of our CRJs. They were being sent over to one of our competitors. And so our maintenance stuff had also gone, and we were down to the last 7 CRJs at the company, and we happened to be on one of them. And it turned out that there was a panel behind the first officer's seat that covered a bunch of controls, and the screw that held the panel in place had stripped. And we held that plane for 2 hours at O'Hare, waiting for them to figure out a solution because they needed that exact screw to put that panel back in place. And they didn't want to duct tape it. It needed the screw. And so eventually what they did is they went over to our competitor and stole a screw from their maintenance people, which I thought was awesome. But it took them 2 hours to come up with that as a resolution. And then we finally put the screw in place, got everybody on board, and left. And that poor guy, I felt bad for that trainee because he had to sit there in the plane for 2 hours with me and the other flight attendant who were freaking awesome. And we had so much fun corrupting him about all the stuff that he was going to be doing as a flight attendant. But that is probably not the story that you want to hear. The point is, it doesn't matter how small the item is, we're going to check it. Now, I don't know if you watch the news. If you do, you've probably seen the occasional accident that happens here or there, and that's probably freaking you out. Understandable. Decompression is probably the scariest thing that could happen on a plane. Generally, what happens in a decompression is there's always some air that's being let out of the plane, because if they didn't, we pressurize the plane and then pump air into it, it would pop. They can't do that. They need pressure release valves. If something were to go wrong in the air and one of those pressure release valves were suddenly to bust open bigger or something like that, then what would happen is the masks would fall and the pilots would then dive for 10,000 feet. Because at 10,000 feet, you can breathe normal air. At 10,000 feet, they would just circle around, find the nearest airport, and land to make sure that everybody was safe, that nobody needed medical attention, stuff like that. But it's not like a crash situation. You would survive that. And you would just put the mask on, but just know if you ever see those masks, you're about to dive for 10,000 feet. I've never had to do it. Out of all the flight attendants that I've known, I've only known one. He was actually my classmate who ever had to experience that. And he was at a different airline, which is now no longer in business. But it's really not common. The other thing, too, is, like I said, there's 2 air systems in the plane. Then they can generally fly above 25,000 feet. If one of the air systems were to go out, they would be redirected to fly at about 22,000 feet. And then if both air systems were to go out, then they would be directed to fly at 10,000 feet. And you may be thinking, wait, there's no air? Part of that is that the pilots, from what I've been told, can redirect some of the air from outside the plane into the plane. I've heard that they can direct as much as 50% of the air into the plane. I don't know if that's the exact percentage. If you're a pilot, put it in the comments. Let me know if that's true or not. But that's what I was told by my pilots. I think that was for the 145 specifically, but as far as I know, that's for all planes. So even if both air systems were to fail, they could fly at 10,000 feet and let in outside air. And honestly, I have flown from one destination to another where both of, they're called air packs, had failed, and we just flew at 9,000 feet the whole time. It slows the flight down. It's usually for shorter destinations, but you can still fly. Turbulence is probably the other scary thing. So there are usually 2 ways that turbulence happen. If the plane is, say this is the nose and this is the tail, and then the wings are across this way. So a plane will either rock this way like a disc around the wings, or it'll go like this, like a teeter-totter around the wings. So one of the safer places you could be is near the wings. And a pilot totally disagreed with me on that. If the plane has an exit row, you may not feel that way. But in my opinion, that's where the least amount of turbulence happens. And generally, the closer you go to the front, the less the pilots say they feel it. They don't feel it the same way the flight attendants do. So if you're worried about feeling turbulence, I recommend you try to get as close to the wings as possible. If you're worried about the exit door popping off or something, then just go a row or 2 behind it, because even in the most recent accident where that happened, all the seats were still intact when the pilots landed. They screw those seats down really well. So basically everything has a backup system, and hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. Also, the other thing that I tell first-time flyers is that when you're up in the air, the clouds are not fluffy, they're lumpy. They're basically balls of water. If you've ever been in a speedboat on a lake, then you know that the faster the boat goes, the more it bounces. And it's the same thing with the plane. The plane is going anywhere from 200 to 500 miles an hour through these big balls of water, and so it bounces. That's why a lot of times pilots are told to fly at 30 or 40,000 feet, because there's less clouds up there. The clouds are generally in the 10,000 to 20,000 foot range, they'll make an announcement and they'll say how high they're flying, which will give you an idea. And the pilots are constantly looking for clear air. They're constantly sharing reports with each other of where the clouds are, where the turbulence is, so that way the planes can fly around it. But whenever you come in for a landing, you're going to go through that 10,000-foot layer of clouds. So if you listen to when they say, okay, it's cloudy in Chicago, then you know it's going to be bumpy on the way down, and you want to be seated before then. The other thing is that up there, the wind is like a river of air. Literally, when you cross it in a plane, it'll rock your plane side to side. So clouds make you do this, and the wind will make you do this. So you can often tell if you're going through the wind or a cloud by if the plane is shaking like that or bouncing like that. Finally, the pilots all have to have a minimum number of hours to sit in those seats. For the first officer, they have to have flown 1,500 hours minimum. And for the captains, it's 2,500 hours minimum. So they have to have a massive amount of experience when they're flying. What I'll say to the kids is try to guess who's landing the plane. When they come in for a landing, they have to drop the back of the plane to look for the tarmac. And so they're searching for it with the 2 sets of wheels that are on the back. It might feel like they're wobbling around depending on how windy it is, but they're coming down and they're looking for the ground. Once they find it and they set those wheels down on the ground, then they'll bring the front of the plane down to help guide and direct the plane. Most of the time, the first officers, when they're new, will go boom, boom. Whereas the captains usually have gotten to know their plane and they get real suave, and so they'll gently set it down and gently send it to the front. So I'll often say to the kids, try to guess who's landing it. Do you think they landed it rough or do you think they landed it gentle? They almost always say it was the first officer. It is a fun little game to play. And you can just ask the flight attendant on the way out of the plane, hey, who was flying the plane this time? Because whoever was flying the plane is the one that landed it. Usually they take turns flying it one direction to the other. So that's what I generally say for first-time flyers. You don't have to be nervous at all. Like I said, I like to try to make the passengers laugh. As far as, I guess, personal experience, this is my own personal story. I'd probably flown to 20 countries by 2008, maybe 24, 25 countries, somewhere in there. And then I had flown to 24 states by the time 2008 came around. I think that was the last time I made a list. And nothing had ever happened on any of them. Nothing. I wasn't afraid of flying at all. But then one day I sat next to a passenger who told me about a rough landing that he had in Ireland where they landed so hard the wheels came up into the plane. Nobody died. Nobody got injured. But it scared him. He said it was a really rough landing. And he scared me with that story. And so then after that, I would freak out every time I flew. And that was 2008 when he told me the story because I was flying to Ireland and he was telling me the story on the way. I was totally freaked out after that. And when I became a flight attendant, I was actually still a little scared of flying. I would say I was probably scared of flying for about a month. I started asking around to the different flight attendants that had been there 20, 30 years. I said, how many times have you had a bad landing, like an accident where something happened or people got injured? And they all said the same thing. 0 times. It literally is safer to go in a plane than it is to go in a car. And you just have to tell yourself that. So I hope that helps. Let's go on to the next question. Erica, can you do a video on flying with dogs? I have a small service dog, 11 pounds, and he flies with me all the time. I like to let him stay in his crate because it's just more clean and comfy for him than lying on the floor. And also I can get up and go to the bathroom without him. Most of my flights are international, and I often upgrade to premium economy, so there is room for the crate. Recently, I flew to California, and there are all these delays and cancellations and whatever, and I ended up taking a trip around the entire U.S. My poor baby was so stressed, or I was stressed on his behalf. But also, there was no room whatsoever to keep his crate on the floor. What do people who are just flying with a pet in cabin do in these circumstances? People are always asking me when they see him, and I have to say, I have no idea. I'm also not sure if the crate counts as a carry-on. If the dog is not a service dog, can you enlighten us? Thanks in advance. Honestly, I don't think they've ever told us to count an animal crate as a carry-on. That would be a gate agent thing. I've never stopped anybody that brought on a crate plus a bag, but it is supposed to go under your seat. Generally with service animals are not expected to be in a crate, and you usually have to sit in the bulkhead, because that is the best place for them to be where the dog can be at your feet. And in one instance, I did hear once of a flight attendant who told me that there was a young girl who used to go to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, who would travel with a miniature horse as her service animal, which was roughly the size of a golden retriever. But since COVID, they have cut the restrictions that you can only travel with like dogs and cats versus they used to allow a lot more types of animals, monkeys, horses, usually mammals, no reptiles or fish kind of thing. But the general rules are that you are supposed to keep the animal in the crate under the seat, and animals of the same kind can be in the crate as well. They might count it as one of your 2 carry-ons, to be honest with you, because of weight and balance issues. You could put your rollerboard in the overhead bin, and you would put the dog crate underneath, and then there's not a lot of room for an extra bag. So to be safer, it is better to count it as one of your carry-ons, and then maybe slip a little bag in there with the dog, or if it's got pockets on the side of the crate, you could do that. But the rule of thumb is generally that you're supposed to keep the animal in the crate. However, having said that, there's so many flight attendants who love animals. So many. And you're probably going to find one on your plane who likes animals too. The reason that I'm saying that is because a lot of times we're not going to stop you if you take your animal out of the crate. It just depends on if you get a flight attendant who's a jerk or not. But most of the flight attendants will even take the animal from you and carry it around like it's their animal because they like animals that much. I've literally had flight attendants show me pictures of their pet as if it's their baby. I remember one flight attendant told me that there was another flight attendant on his no-fly list because that flight attendant called his dog ugly. I was just like, okay. And he showed me the picture that he showed the flight attendant, that the flight attendant said the dog was ugly. And it was not a flattering picture of the dog, but he showed me other pictures of the dog and it was cute. But that's how much flight attendants generally like animals. If you were to release a cat, you'll see a ton of videos where the cat gets away from you. So it's generally best to keep the cats in the crate. If you want to take your dog out and hold it, just ask the people around you if they're okay with that or not. Because if they're not okay with it, then it's very likely that they're going to complain to the flight attendants. And the flight attendants don't care unless a complaint happens. Other than that, most of the airports now have a service relief section where you can take your animal to relieve themselves. But I've been to airports all around the country to where there will actually be little outdoor spaces sometimes on the other side of security. If you're worried about your dog and you want to comfort your dog, you can take the dog out and hold on to it. The reason most flight attendants aren't going to argue with you is they might assume that animal is a service animal, and generally service animals are allowed to be held. So if you wanted to, you could also have your animal certified as a service animal and nobody will give you a hard time about it. And you could still carry it in the crate if you want. You don't have to keep it outside of the crate. There's a lot of different reasons you might have a service animal, anywhere from seizures to anxiety to blindness and so on. They are considered medical equipment, which is why we don't give you a hard time about bringing them on, and we don't generally give you a hard time about them if you want to take it out of the crate. Next question. I saw another video which seemed genuine that urged people to read the flight attendant's name tag and call them by name whenever asking for help. It said that makes the attendant feel seen as a person, and they may find ways to get you more than you asked for. Is that true? No. I've been in situations where a customer called me by name, which they got off my badge, and just felt like a creepy fake intimacy. The same video suggested folks bring a treat, like a box of chocolates for the cabin crew, and they would be treated even more kindly than they otherwise would be. Are passengers even allowed to give food gifts to crew, even commercially packaged stuff? How would a passenger know how much chocolate or whatever is called for? With so many allergies and dietary preferences nowadays, does a gift of food even make sense? So I did answer this in the last Q&A about should you bring a gift basket for flight attendants. I think the best thing you can do is just bring a basket, throw in some Skittles, some Starburst, some M&Ms, or some little Halloween treats. Let them pick out whatever they want. You could give them the whole thing and then they could share it, which they will do a lot of times. You are allowed to give them food. Prepackaged food is better. They won't really eat homemade food. You can even tip your flight attendants. A lot of people do tip flight attendants, but that's not necessary. So when it comes to the name tag thing, there are some flight attendants that absolutely don't want their names read. So if they're not wearing a name badge on their chest, they will also have a name tag card on their lanyard. Don't read that one off. You can see their name from it, but if you're looking at that one to get it, you're going to creep them out. Whatever name tag they're wearing, they get to pick the name that they want to be called. So sometimes it'll be like a last name, and you can call them Mr. or Miss, whatever the last name is. Mine just says Erica. One of my classmates, her nickname is Jules, so hers said Jules. But if they're wearing a name tag, then they don't mind if you call them that name tag. I once had Jesse Williams in my first class, and that man has the most beautiful eyes. And he was there with his girlfriend and kids. And I was trying not to fawn over them. Most celebrities want to be left alone. But Jesse Williams, when he says your name with those blue eyes, oh my gosh. I was like, girlfriend's right there. And I'm married, stop it. You know? But most of the time, it doesn't bother us. I think you get an idea from the flight attendant if they seem like they're a lot of fun. And if they're wearing a badge with their name, then yes. If there's no badge, they don't want you to reference their name. And they'll purposely put their last name if they don't want you to say their name, or they just won't wear the name tag. They always have to wear the wings. That's part of our uniform, but they might not wear the name tag with it. Here's another one. I'll just jump to the question part with it. One of the AI that they watched said that you can't wear compression socks 20 to 30 strength through the check-in, I'm guessing TSA. So put them after you get through security. I'm 80 with neuropathy and feet and terrible sense of direction since childhood. And then she goes on to the next part. As far as the compression socks is, as far as I know, nobody stops you for compression socks. As far as I know, they don't have metal in it. I've never seen anybody be told to take their socks off. I usually recommend waiting till you get to the gate for the compression socks just because they irritate my feet really bad. I have very sensitive feet. But if they don't irritate your feet and you're used to them, I have not seen TSA stop those at all. So there's that part. But her question is, can I wear a jacket with more than 2 pockets, as one video said not to? My 9 days of RX pills in 7-day compartments on carry-on or purse okay with pictures of actual prescriptions on my phone. Also, my hearing aid batteries in purse. As far as vests or jackets with pockets, they don't care how many you have. Take as many as you want. I always recommend try to get something with zippers, whether you have the kind of vest with the pockets here or inside. It's usually better if you have the zippers on it because then you can shove them full of stuff and then you can throw it in the security bin that goes through the scanner and then they can scan everything. And if there's something that they need to look at more closely, they'll just go into your jacket and they'll look. I know a lot of travelers that literally only travel with a jacket with a ton of pockets and then maybe pants with pockets, which they have to empty out. And that's all they travel with. They don't take any luggage and then they try to go to different places and see if they can buy stuff. So do what you want with the jacket. If you do take pills, the picture idea is a very good idea for on your phone. If you're taking a lot of them, you might want to bring them in their containers. So then that way, if they need to look at anything, they can see exactly what that is. If you got it in a pill box, then yeah, I would say take a picture probably with both the bottle and then the pill next to it. So then that way you could just be like, okay, look, this is what it is for each one. And I think that'd be a safe way to get through security with it. They don't want to stop your pills from coming through because they understand that people need them to live. That's what I would recommend for that. Also, can you take your hearing aid batteries in your purse? Yeah, that's fine. Your batteries always need to go inside the plane. Never check those, just in case of fire hazards. So I have another one about tipping, but this one does tipping and another question about the wheelchairs. She's 61 and can walk onto the plane, but has post-COVID syndrome and has trouble with hurrying and distances. She's traveling alone with both carry-on and check luggage, so they handle that too. I already told Lufthansa I'm requesting the wheelchair assistance and will ask for TSA carers closer to the flight. Someone explained to me that this involves one wheelchair assistant handing me off to another. How much do you suggest I tip? And then the other person just asked, what is the suggested field of tip amount? I'll start with the bag part. Depending on the wheelchair, they take your bags with you, just straight up, period. If you have a wheelchair that folds up, and that's the kind where they grab the handles and they shake it apart like that, and then they push the seat down, there's no place to put your bag on that except you got the foot pedals. What they'll make you do is they'll make you push your feet apart, and then they'll put the bag between your feet, and they'll have you hold onto the bag in front of you, and they'll probably put your smaller item in your lap. And then you just hold on to that while they push you through the airport. That's the old type of wheelchair. That's been replaced in a lot of airports. But if you go to a smaller airport, you might find that as well. In a larger airport, most of the wheelchairs have been replaced with a wheelchair that looks like this. And it does have a bar underneath the seat where they can slide your carry-on into it. And then they will put the small bag on your lap. So that's another way that they do it. If you have multiple bags, then a lot of times what they will do is while they're pushing your wheelchair with the handles, they will grab your bag handle and have it extended out, and they will try to push both while dragging your bag at the same time. If they pick you up with a cart, then they will stow your bag with the cart, but you don't have to worry about your bags. That'll be totally taken care of. As far as what is a decent tip, they get paid less than minimum wage. It is classified as like a waitressing job because they get tips. So depending on where they're at, they might make less than minimum wage. They might make minimum wage and tips. In Chicago, they make less than minimum wage because they average about $2,000 a month in tips. So imagine they're working 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month. That's about 20 days. And they're averaging $2,000 of tips. And from what I've seen, the average tip that people give is $2, which I think sucks personally because, like I said, from O'Hare to go from one Fargate, say K20 to G20, that's half a mile. And that's 10 minutes of them pushing you as quickly as they can to get you from one side of the airport to the other to only be given $2 is a bummer. More common, I will see 5. Obviously, the more you give, the happier they are. They're like a waitress, but they can only handle one customer at a time. So making $2,000 a month on average for 20 days a month is about $100 a day. They're going anywhere from 8 to 10 hours at a time. If you were to assume that's 10 hours a day, because they are overworked and they are expected to finish up with their current passenger before they get to go home, then that averages out to $10 an hour. And they stay with you from one plane to the next plane. So if that's an hour, that means the most they're going to make in that hour is whatever you give them. So while I would say that probably the average tip I see is about $5, it is considered a waitressing job. And the more time they spend with you, the less money they can make with other passengers. So trust me, they want to get you to where you're going and get on as fast as they can. So if you ever don't see them at the jet bridge, it's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't want to be there. It's because there was probably a gate change and they're trying to haul it across the airport to get to you. Generally, I would just say, you decide. Do you think they're a jerk? Do you think they did a good job? I would say probably for me, minimum, I would give them at least $5 to $10 just because they're doing so much physical work for me personally, pushing me in the wheelchair, dealing with my bags, making sure to put my bag in the overhead bin. How much would you tip a waitress? Waitresses for tips are always dependent upon how much the cost of the meal is, but there's no cost for a wheelchair. So they'll be fine with a couple bucks. They'll be happy with 5. They'll be thrilled if you give them more than 5. You could literally make their day if you give them a 10 or a 20. I once had a passenger hand me a 10 because I pushed them across the airport to the farthest gate. She was running late and I was so out of breath, and I was very flattered that she gave me $10. I was like, you don't have to, because obviously for me, my job is a flat rate, but I'm a flight attendant. I'll take tips too. Usually people, when they order alcohol, they like to tip. So I like to give them a lot of alcohol. I'm just saying. But yeah, it's basically up to you how much you do. It is basically considered a courtesy. In the smaller airports, again, there's usually not a service. It's usually the gate agent that does it, and they're doing a bunch of other things too. So they also appreciate tips because they don't make that much money. For example, in Chicago, the minimum wage in Chicago is $15 an hour. And I believe the gate agents start at around like $19 or $20 an hour. And then they work double shifts, like 16-hour days where they just go. They would appreciate tips too. But if you don't want to tip them, like I said, just bring a little basket or a bag of different goodies and let them just pick out whatever they like. They'll appreciate that as well, since they're going all the time they start. And that wraps up the Q&A for today. I am still working on the sleep video, guys. I'm sorry it's taking so long, but as I was putting it together, I came across a whole bunch more research and I'm testing it all out to make sure that I give you guys the best information. I came across some really good stuff. And I'm hoping to do that soon. I am going to have to adjust the schedule of when I'm posting because this 3 videos in 4 days thing is not working for me with my schedule. It's too much filming and editing. So I'm thinking I'm going to change the Q&As to Sundays instead. That way I can still do the Tuesdays and Friday videos. Generally, whatever questions you ask me that you want me to answer in the Q&A, always ask me on the Travel Tuesday videos because that's where I'm going to go to look for questions to answer. If you like this, make sure you hit the like button to let me know. I always appreciate that. That feels so good. Also hit the subscribe and notification bell in case you want to be alerted to any new ones. See you guys on Travel Tuesday. Ciao.